Four little lectures real quick, and then we're going to you can either drive or walk. It's only 2 blocks down to St. Andrews. If you haven't been there, you just go down to the street right here, walk 2 blocks, and it's on the right. Tim and everybody's already down there setting up, so we're going to get through our little lectures very quickly. Aren't we, Kay? We're going to quickly go through our lectures.
Where's everybody at?
What?
Where's everybody at?
I don't know, but they better get here because they're going to miss out. Today, they might be, well, hopefully they'll send them back up here.
Yeah, I went down there
And there's people down here?
help y'all? And they said, yes, you can help us, you can go to class.
Oh, good. Okay, well, maybe they'll send them back up here, whoever's missing. Okay, so the first instructor is Kathy Carroll. She's going to be talking about plant propagation. Propagation, that's what we're doing today. However, Kathy is sick, so I will be playing the role of Kathy Carroll today. Switching hats.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm the stand-in.
Good morning, Kathy.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be talking about plant propagation. All right, so I'm going to wing it. I've looked at this presentation all of one time, so here we go. Propagation is the way a plant reproduces itself, and it can either be by itself or with our help, man-made help. And there's certain rules when you do it to make it work. It's more of guidelines than rules. When a plant reproduces itself, that's just the natural way from a seed, or maybe it'll lay itself down and reproduce. So we're going to be learning about all of that today. And it's kind of a folklore about the green thumb. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but we're going to change all black thumbs into green thumbs today, okay? Yay. History of plant propagation. So after the Ice Age, or one of the Ice Ages when humans came about, it was primarily just through seeds, right? In about 8000 BC, some goat grass got accidentally crossed with some wild wheat, and they were like, oh, this is really nice. This is a better wheat, a better way to make our flour so we can eat. That created something called emmer. They crossed emmer with another goat grass and came up with something more like what we have nowadays, the bread wheat. And that's about the time people started settling into settlements, and they were together instead of in little groups in caves and stuff like that. So that's how wheat came about. And that was really the first time man stepped in and started on purpose crossing things to create something better, a better plant for us to eat. Okay? Way better. More better. Yeah. It's the very first one on this side. It's just the introduction to propagation. Does that make sense? It's supposed to be Kathy Carroll.
Which one?
I'd have to look.
It's different, yeah.
Okay, she said it is a little different. Apparently we had an older version. It's pretty much the same. There might be a couple slides that are a little different. It's just really the introduction to propagation. Why it's important to us, it's so that we can maintain plant diversity, so that things don't start getting weaker. They get stronger as we evolve with better seeds. That's what the farmers used to do. They would pick out the best plants, save those seeds. The Indians did it as well. They learned not to eat the best looking plant. They saved those seeds, and that created a better plant the next time. It ensures our food security, so we don't starve to death. We're also preserving endangered species. We've already lost quite a few plants, but they keep finding new ones as well, so kind of overlaps each other. And of course, we also use it for our research to find better things for us to eat and get vitamins from. Types of propagation. There's sexual and asexual. We're going to have a whole lecture on each one, so we're not going to go into it a whole lot, but sexual is the seeds. Asexual is when we take the plant itself and take a part of it, like a cutting or a leaf, something like that, and create a whole nother plant. That's the main differences. Legal considerations. This is what we really want to concentrate on in this little lecture. Plant breeders have started getting patents on their labels, on their plants. We don't want to go against the law. So what you do when you buy a plant at a store and it has a label, you're going to look at it. I'm going to go back in a second. You're going to look at the label What did it do?
Ding,
Why did it do that?
ding, dang it.
Why did it do that?
It's got a nice little sign to it.
I've got a gremlin.
It's running amok.
So there's a little bitty number, usually either at the top or the bottom, and it starts, I think, with PP, and then a long number. That means it has a patent on it. We are not allowed to propagate that plant. Not for gifts, not for ourselves, not for anything.
This is America.
I know it. It doesn't mean we don't. It just means it's against the law. Yeah.
Who determines that law?
Edgar? No, not Edgar. President Hoover. What was his first name?
President.
In the 30s.
Edgar?
Herbert.
Herbert, thank you. I knew you.
I didn't know it because of the 30s. I just knew his name.
Okay, so Herbert Hoover, president back in the 1930s, was the first president to create patents for plants.
Okay.
The very first plant was patented in 1931, right? You know everything.
Very
Does
good.
anybody know what that plant was?
A rose.
Hey, you cheated. You looked at the thing.
You knew that, right?
All right, does anybody know the name of that rose?
A+, right?
Hello?
Too much headphones.
Any guesses?
American Beauty.
No. Good guess, but wrong. I believe it was New Dawn, if I recall correctly.
Two of them.
And do you know where roses are native to, by the way?
Turkey.
Asia, Northern Europe, those countries. Hoover and his wife Lou traveled quite a bit. They actually lived in China for a long time. I suspect it's because his wife liked roses, maybe. Maybe that's why it was the first. I'm just guessing here. They actually knew Mandarin Chinese fluently. They lived there that long, the Hoovers. And they would actually use it in the White House if they wanted to have a secret conversation without staff hearing. They would talk in Mandarin Chinese. Trivia, you didn't need to know that at all. Okay, so.
I live for truth.
I love trivia. Asexual propagation. These patents protect against the asexual propagation methods, cuttings, root divisions, or tissue culture, genetically identical copies of that patented plant. Plant Variety Protection Act. This provides, I got to read this to you because it's legal stuff. Intellectual property rights, protection to breeders of new varieties of plants. They're really getting into this with the new GMO stuff. Apparently the GMO seeds are much stronger than our regular old seeds, and a lot of the farms that are trying to do things organically, the GMO seeds are drifting into the old timers farms, and they're having all kinds of legal battles over this. So it gets pretty intense with some of these patents. They're very protective of it. Like Kay says, if you do it at home in your backyard, yeah, I'm gonna look the other way, but you are now aware, right? Knowledge is power. So yes, it is illegal, so look for that trademark on the labels. We looked at that. This is an actual patented plant. So the plant itself can have a patent, and you're not allowed to propagate it. All right.
But if you lose the little ticket on it, you don't know.
It was lost.
You have the patent number on it, how are you supposed to know?
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
It's better to ask forgiveness.
Yes, easier to ask forgiveness than to ask permission, right? Yeah.
I think she's
But-
done this before.
All right, we're not going to go there. You know, what you do at home is your problem. All right, so your instructors today, and they will be played by themselves, thank goodness. Sexual plant propagation is going to be Claire, asexual plant propagation is going to be Kay, and plant propagation by division is going to be Beth. I would now like to introduce you to Claire. Come on up. And thank goodness she's going to take over. There you go. Thank you, Claire.
There it is, there it is.
Good morning, Claire.
Everybody look at Claire.
Okay, my name is Claire Hebinger. I sat in your seats a couple of something years ago. class 36, and I am glad to be here to help out Paul and Tim and April with the class. And this is a great class, and I hope you observe how many moving parts there are before we get all through. There's a lot of people that donated time and plants, and I think it's because we love it. So anyway, I also thank you in advance for your kindness and patience on my presentation skills. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about sexual propagation, aka seeds, and then Kay and Beth will talk about the other methods of propagation.
She gets all the fun.
Pollinate.
Sex.
You may use all different kinds of propagation, depending on your plant, your skills, your time, and then sometimes you just go out and buy a plant. So we've all been there. Sometimes it just is what it is. We have the pros and cons of seed propagation. The pros are that it's relatively inexpensive to buy a little packet of seed for $2 as opposed to one 4-inch for $4. Or it's also easy to keep seeds from one year to the other. You can store them. And then there's different standards with commercial seeds, so it makes it easier to have seeds that you're going to get what you get. The cons are that sometimes they can go bad, as in they're tired, they're aging like our bodies. They age and they can't germinate. So that's one of the cons. And then also they take longer once you get them in the ground. Well, then you've got to wait for them to get their leaves out, get to a certain part before you ever even get to a flower or a fruit, as opposed to buying a plant. Well, you've got the stem, you got the roots, everything's ready. So there's the pro and cons there. You have this in your Master Gardener Handbook. I know y'all read it in chapter 3 and got tested, so you've already done this. And we're going to talk about propagation of angiosperms, which is flowers. Sexual is the pollination and fertilization of the egg. This is what is needed to produce seed. And this is why pollinators, bees, flies, wind, whatever, is so important to the plant and ultimately to us as humans, is to get these plants pollinated. There are some plants that need to be pollinated and others that can self-pollinate. Plants that need pollinated either by wind or insect can be corn, squash, watermelon, blackberries, cauliflower. They take care of themselves. The wind and nature take care of themselves. Self-pollinating examples are, they get pollinated by an indirect source. Self-pollinating examples are sunflowers and peas and peaches and potatoes and tomatoes. They can take care of themselves, so they can be they don't have to be exposed to outside sources to get pollinated. Some plants need to be cross-pollinated. I know there are some fruit trees that like some pears, you need to have 2 pear trees because they need to cross-pollinate. And then they've got new varieties out there that are self-pollinating. So if you've got a small garden area that you only have room for 1 peach tree, be sure and look for a self-pollinating peach tree. Otherwise, you need to look and know your space and the plant requirements on the pollination. Yes?
The pollinating, like you said, a pear tree, if it needs to be pollinated by another type of pear tree, right? Or not just another pear tree of the same kind?
It kind of needs to be the same kind, same species.
Because I thought there was, like they say, like moonglow peaches are good pollinators for Bartlett, but I don't know if that's what I was trying to get at. Should it be the same kind?
It should be the same kind.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into the fine details and say that there's never anything cross-pollinated between
it's not
species.
Like hybridize or nothing.
No, but it may just change it and not in a good way. Whereas if you got the same species, well then, hey, I know who you are and let's make some great
yeah.
fruit.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas you got something else different, you go, oh, well, let's turn green and twist. So there's those considerations. I'm not an expert on that, and the tree or Phanex, the Milbergers, they're a good place to ask specifically about trees and what needs to be absolutely same species.
Okay, I'm sorry for
Okay? All right. Here is a visual example of cross-pollination, like I was talking about. Let's be green and curvy, or let's whatever. It's good to have some different outcomes. It actually makes for a stronger plant series. Just makes them stronger. As they survive through time, they can have improved, like for example, drought abilities, possibly. All right, hybrids, like us humans, combine elements of both of the parents, and this can create variety and the different strengths that stay with the plant. They can hopefully continue to go, and maybe the lesser strengths die away. With self-pollinated, they're more similar. They're going to be the same. And sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want true variety. So, things to think about. Hybrid seeds give us a chance to improve desirable traits. And as you look at all of these in here, the color, the insect and disease resistance, you've heard of all kinds of things where we've got, this one is drought tolerant, this one is that. When you get long stem roses in the grocery store, they're beautiful, they last a long time, they're on that long stem, but do they smell? That trait got left out. So they went for this trait and the long trait, and the smell just kind of went by the wayside. So those are examples of how you can tweak desirable traits. Things to consider. Many gardeners in here, we enjoy collecting seeds. I just love watching the plants, the different plants make their seed. It's fascinating. Nature is just great. Seed, you can collect them in the wild and permission, and watch out for your patents, but it's just great to collect stuff like, oh, I don't have any of that, I'm going to get that. And it's also easy to share. Things to consider is the timing of the seed. For example, a green bean. We want to eat a green bean when the bean pod is green. It's tender and green. But that as seed is not ready. It's not ready at all. It still has some more maturing to do. So we want that bean pod or pea pod to be dried out. And that's the hardening, and it's the seed getting ready and to maturity for the seed. So you have to watch when you pick things, is that seed really ready? And there's so many different examples, I can't even touch on everything. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, dissemination. Examples of that is dandelions, cottonwood trees, bluebonnets. Those babies fly and go everywhere. And nature has given them the abilities to fly on the wind, or like the bluebonnet, I don't know if you've ever seen it, when it rains and they're twisted and that water hits them and then they pop. And that's just nature's way of spreading the seed. So you need to catch it, like if you want a bluebonnet, you need to catch it before that pod, it's got to be dry, but before it pops. All right, other consideration is the drying time. So once you have them, well, you want to keep them dry to keep them in a dormant state, because you don't want them to germinate in your bag or whatever. So we want to keep them dry, and also our storage. Wow. Here we go.
thought that was a fly on it.
There you go.
Big old fly.
No, that was a seed.
There you go. So these are things that, when you store it, you want to be ready and have it to keep it dry and ready. The other thing you would consider is collecting from the best that you see. You don't want to get seed from a scrawny little plant. You want to get seed from a better looking plant that's more successful and vigorous. All right, seed collection. They're best stored in a sealed container with low relative humidity, again, to keep them dormant, under cool conditions. In the back of the car or on the workbench in the garage is not a place to store seed. You will deteriorate their lifespan. Ziploc bags or plasticware are great for holding seed, and the little silica packs that we get in all our packaging, to keep things dry, those are great to put inside that container to help keep it dry. And you can use them over and over again. The sealed containers should then be either placed in the refrigerator in a dark place, and many of the seeds will last for years. And it's just going to be your experience with what you have and what you collected, and so it's not 100%, but you got a good rate.
Can you deep freeze them?
It says not freezing.
It depends. Think of all the sizes of seeds that you have. You've got some that are a little bitty, have next to nothing of material to them. Those I would not freeze.
Okay.
They don't have much to protect them. Whereas if you've got a hardier seed, yes, you could freeze them. And I was thinking of, where is it in Norway where they have the world storage? That's in a cold place. So
I thought that was like a deep freeze. That they had.
It is.
So if they can deep freeze it for the sake of saving seed for civilization, why shouldn't we do that?
well, I bet they've got it in better storage things to keep it from being too cold, too susceptible. I bet they have some really good techniques to protect those seeds from the actual coldness. So you and me, put it in the bottom freezer drawer, or if,
I got a bunch of dead seeds in there.
there you go. No. Try it. It's
I'll try them before I throw them away.
It's going to be your experience. Where do you have more room? In your freezer or in your refrigerator? It's your call, and your experience will tell you what does best. Also, as far as seeds are concerned, I don't know if any of you have been up to the office. We have the seed exchange upstairs. So we have both excess seeds from vendors around town, Walmart and Home Depot. Give us some of their excess seeds. They might be a year. Their date is a little bit older because they didn't sell, so they want to have the freshest dated seeds out, and they give us the less. That doesn't mean that they won't work. We'll take a free seed when we can get a free seed. So please help yourself, and they also collect heirloom seeds. For example, my husband's family, they got green beans seeds from a neighbor back in the 50s or 40s. And my husband's parents planted those green beans every year here in Guadalupe County, and then passed it to their kids, and the grandkids have it, and that's an heirloom seed. And it's also something that it grows right here. Maybe Lavernia and the sand can't help you there, but it in this area of the state of Texas, it does well. So that's something to consider with heirloom seeds. They're tried and tested and strong. Let's see. Here's an example of those beans. We named them preacher beans. Let's see. Okay, there are different requirements to germinate a seed, and it's going to be per the seed. I'm only going to talk about two. The physical, the biggest example to me is wildflower seeds. Those are tough seeds. They're in a tough environment. They've got a hard shell. They've got a hard life. They've either got to go through an animal's stomach, or they got to be ground into the gravel or whatever. And that's part of the nature getting into that hard seed covering so that it can then go on to its next stage to germinate. So sometimes we do ourselves by scarifying them, either with sandpaper or sulfuric acid or some boiling to help soften that outside edge. The physiological, some seeds have temperature requirements. They need to be cold, really cold and dormant. So for example, tulips, you always hear putting tulips in the refrigerator for 6 weeks before they go outside. It's about getting them ready. Okay, so talked about scarification, and one of them is like putting them in boiling water or soaking them overnight. It's about that outside edge. I've never done the sulfuric acid. I haven't needed to. I haven't done the actually picking on them, but I'm sure there's some scientists out there who have, to get that seed ready to germinate.
Claire?
Yes.
Have you ever done the boiling water thing?
Not the boiling water, I've done the overnight.
Me too. I've done that, and I used like the nail file. But
Yes.
I've never tried boiling water.
Yeah, I like this one on blue bonnets to sandpaper and do it like that. So,
Do it like how?
like that. With some background music, Led Zeppelin. Devo's good.
Evo?
The title song is Deliverance would be good.
Whip it good.
Yeah.
Whip it good. All right, and then there's purchasing seed. Some of this is, well, you may find those types of storage in San Antonio, where they've got the bulk storage, but they can also put a coating on there to help them be best prepared in the soil for you. So, for example, especially in the commercial, like your row crop, they purchase their seed. It's got a coating of maybe some antifungal stuff and some stimulant or something, and so you can see it with the colorations on there. Sometimes in the retail seeds that we buy, you may see a coloration on there, and it's about giving that seed the best jump start it can. That's not all seeds a requirement. No, that's just for commercial where they really need every seed to come up. Okay, what does it take to germinate? This is the main thing, no matter what the seed is. This is it. It's water, oxygen, and temperature. So, and then light. So those are the big four. And depending on the seed and the time of the year and the temperature, and you can manipulate these things like in a greenhouse, or you can go with nature in nature's timing, like springtime and fall. You're not going to be planting spinach in the summer. You're just not. You're going to waste your time. Okay, and this one, I think you also had this in your book about the viability. I haven't seen a purchased seed that was not good. I know they only give you so many, like 10 or 15 in that little packet, but I have not done any viability testing. But if you were to, you can give it the moisture and let it see if it starts before you stick them in the ground. So if you've got some in the freezer a long time,
Oh, I would definitely test.
then you could do that. Before you planted a whole row, you could do that.
I do that anyway.
Okay.
Is that just like a wet paper towel?
It's a wet paper towel, and inside the plastic bag,
Stick it in the dark.
Okay.
yeah. And so that will,
Yeah, just put it in
yes.
paper towel, put it in plastic, wet it a little bit, and put it in the dark.
In the dark. Do you know what it is in that seed that likes, some seeds like okra, like hot dirt. They like it when it's hot.
warm soil.
Right. And then some of them, like we were talking about the tulips, they like things to get cold. Do you know what it is in that seed or that bulb that makes them like hot or cold?
It's the characteristic. That's why we have cold crop vegetables, so those are, I just ate some the other night. So, some kohlrabi, cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli. Those are cold temperature grown vegetables. They will not grow in the summer.
Right.
So therefore, their soil temperature can be lower to germinate. They want to be a lower temperature to germinate.
Do you know why though? Do you know why?
I got it, yes.
As-
It's where they originated from, like okra comes from Africa. They like it hot.
Okay, there you go then.
And what do you think, where do you think of when you think of tulips?
Water, cold, and cotton and okra, they like the heat in the summertime, so they like the warmer temperature on the soil. All right, let's see here.
And it's not just they like it, like plant okra, when it's like 50-degree dirt, or soil, they'll rot. They might sprout, but then the roots will rot. So just wait till it's like 70 degrees.
All right,
No hurry.
so when we get these seeds in the ground, it's kind of important to recognize what you have planted. So we're going to talk about angiosperms, angiosperms and the two recognized classes, which is monocots and dicots. Here's the example of a seed in the monocot and the dicot. And for me, that just, hey, what the heck is a monocot? I see a kernel of corn there. I see a pecan there. So those are the differences, and it comes into play when you first start seeing those coming up. Well, I can identify some corn easily, whereas if I planted corn and something like this comes up, uh-oh, I got weeds or something. So you kind of need to know. It helps you when you, especially when you don't have, you're in bare soil as opposed to your little pots. You can expect what you planted to come up. If you're out in the garden in the flower bed, you may not get exactly where you wanted it and what you wanted. All right, the conditions for starting seeds. This is what we're talking about. There's the water, there's humidity, there's light, there's, in this case, like in the potting in small containers, the sanitation of those containers. We need to think about the timing of the year, what it is that we're going to be growing, or if it's going to be in a manipulated environment that we can bring it out later to speed it up. So let's see, that is my husband planting said green beans. And so it's the time of year, there's lettuce on his right, which is probably just about done, too hot, and then there's onions on the left. So that's springtime. He's already got it in the ground. And, all right, if you are not going directly into the bed or the soil, well then you can do it in your containers. And it doesn't have to be a brand new container, but it should be a clean container, because we're talking about seed that they're just starting out. They need the best environment they can have to start out. So you want it to be clean, no fungi or mold or pest or whatever from the previous occupant of the pot. So, and any of these containers will do. My mother-in-law used green bean cans, and poked a hole in the bottom. That's what she used for her cans, her potting medium. The soil, it's tender, it's new growth, whatever. It can't handle. Most seeds can't handle go straight into the ground. It needs to have an easy environment. So we use perlite and lighter things to make it easier for the roots to go through or the water to come down, as opposed to putting it in some clay soil, your seed's going to have a hard time. We have prepared the soil that you're going to use today, and we dampen the soil first before we plant the seed, and we do not put any fertilizer in there. Again, it's a tender seed just starting its growth, and comes into contact with fertilizers going, burn, burn, burn. And that's another story. But the seeds, like most embryos, have their own resources of stored food to start with. Again, there's commercial varieties out there that are already pre-mixed, or you can make your own. This is sphagnum peat moss and perlite and vermiculite. And yes, you will hear other classes on soil that talk about all the different variations of that. It's your plant, what you're going to be planting, that makes your determination. Seed packets. Seed packets are very, very important. We get, just the bukus of information on here. We find out if it goes in the full sun, how many days to harvest, the depth that we plant them out, and then the spacing between the seeds. Whether you can go into a container, and if you do, how many in a container? When can you transplant, start the seed? So we're down here, so March through May, and then July through August, that's when you can transplant these. The other is then this sell-by date. If they've been sitting in the store in the gas station, if you're out in Wade, Bum Hunt, and they got seeds from December of 2020, you may not want to buy those because they've been sitting not in the best environment. So this is highly, highly important. And each of your packaging companies have some variation in this, but that's very important. Another thing is, this is getting at your temperature, the temperature of your soil there, when it's going to do well. If we are doing a manipulated environment, we could have changed the soil temperature with heating mats. And there's some versions of that, and then the master gardeners have some small heating mats to germinate seed. Humidity, here's a way to control the humidity. Here's a low effort to control one or two. If you were to have a greenhouse, which I think is topic coming up, you also have to consider, not worry, the air circulation. You can't have it too humid, then the disease can get an environment going in there. So you have to consider some circulation. If you go straight out in the ground, you got to consider wind, as in blowing over that tender leaf. So all kinds of stuff. Lights down in the greenhouse, or like in January when we've got short days, you can use lights to give them the correct amount of time of light. Watering. You want to have the soil moist when we put it in there, and you want to keep it moist, but you do not want to use frigid January cold water on your seeds or on your young plants when they're coming up, because that's going to go shock them. So you want to have them at room temperature wherever they are. Have them at room temperature. And yes.
Can I ask, before watering with the light, how long do you leave that light on?
It's going to depend on the number of hours of light that plant needs. And if it's in January, you may have it on 12 hours. Or if it's in May and you're doing something else, well, you may not need it as long, because we've got more natural light too. So, and then ask others that have their own greenhouses, and ask somebody else for advice and their best practices and experience that they've had.
Yes, ma'am.
You have in your handouts a milk jug starter. That is a good little microcosm of an environment where you're controlling the moisture in there and the wind. If you need it to have a little bit, if it's too moist in there, you could open it up a bit, you can close it, you can move it in and out of the sun or whatever. The Big Red Barn has used this in the past, so it's a small scale starting project. The other handout, the Grow Seedlings handout, has just bukus of information. It's, I think it's landscape? No, it's that one. It's 2 pages, yeah. That one. No, that's the milk jug.
This is the milk jug and this really.
And then the back page, there you go. The back page is the seeds.
This one?
Yes.
Page 2.
All kinds of things you could ever want to know.
It's behind the jugs, milk jug starters.
All right, and so you will probably get this same kind of enthusiasm in spring. You know, gardeners are going. We got all kinds of stuff going. All right, so after you get your seedlings up and they are large enough to handle, they should be transplanted. The smaller plants are much easier to handle and generally recover quicker from the shock of transplanting. It's important to note that the seedlings should be handled by one of the leaves. If something happens to damage the leaf, the plant will survive. If you pick it up by the neck, you could break its neck and then you've killed the plant. So you want to gently lift it up, and then here in this example, we've got here prying it up from the soil again, keeping the roots together as much as possible, intact. You want to get this plant transplanted as soon as you can, because we do not want the roots to dry out. And so you want to get it into its spot as soon as you can and get some water on it so that it can start acclimating and getting into its spot. You want to plant it at the same height that it was in the pot so that you're not under potting it or over potting it, and the exception is tomatoes. They do like to be buried a little deeper. So let's see. Yeah, so you want to be ready when you start transplanting. Know where you're going to go with it and have all your tools and water and where you're going with it. Oh, see, there's that dead one right there.
Mac, you murderer.
Yes, yes. Okay, fertilizing. After they've got some age to them, they're teenagers, whatever, they can stand on their own, you will give them a little bit of fertilizer. Not much, because again, they're still tender. And we call that, when they get too much, we call that burning. And that's what my husband did with a lot of his tomatoes. He put mushroom compost on there, pretty young mushroom compost, and by golly, they died on him. They did not like it. So you have to be gentle with your fertilizer. Yes, we want to give them, it's when they're old enough, we want to give them, but you got to be gentle with that fertilizing. It's not until you have a mature plant that you can go, okay, here, you can have it in certain conditions. So you don't want to go to the effort of bringing up the plant and then have it burn it with fertilizer.
Miss Claire,
Yes,
rabbit manure doesn't burn.
not as bad.
You can use it.
Yeah, but you still can. If you,
I mean, you wouldn't pile it up against a baby plant.
Exactly.
But you can mix it in and
Yes.
not worry about it.
Yes. All right, the last thing is the hardening off. After you've got these plants up from your little bitties and you maybe transplanted them once or twice, you want to be careful, and just like right now with houseplants, if you've had them stored in for the winter and you're taking them outside, back out summer, you're not going to stick them straight out in the sun first thing. Mm-hmm. They're going to get sunburned, like, oh! So you need to, and the same thing with the wind and the temperature, you want to gradually acclimate them to their new environment, step by step, so that they can grow and adjust to it. The end. Any questions?
Well, I want to say two things. First off, we want people to get things to eat and not starve to death quietly, okay? The second is, you're going to have a really hard time following this presentation in your handout because I got orders yesterday to cut my presentation down. Yes. Yes, I murdered my presentation. Well, at least seriously harmed it. No, really, you've got a lot more information in your handout than I'm going to have time to cover this morning. But I had gave you the full thing. So if it sounds a little choppy, because this is the first time I've done the altered. Yeah, I'm trying to find a polite word for what I did in my full presentation. The altered presentation. The second thing is, Claire got to have all the fun, but we get to play with sharp tools, okay? So, let's get started here. We're gonna, when you talk about plant propagation, the real reason we propagate is we want more, right? I'm not satisfied with what we got to have more. There are a number of ways to do this. Obviously, Claire just did a wonderful presentation on seeds. Asexual prop is basically cloning. With seeds, you get potential variation because of the propagation process in the pollination. When you do cuttings, you're going to get, I hope you're happy with the plant, because you're going to get exactly the same plant later. There are a number of different ways to do it. Some of them we will not be talking about, but you do have some information in your handout on it. One is layering, both simple and air. Division, Beth is going to spend some time on. Bulb chipping I will cover real quickly. And leaf cuttings I will cover real quickly. Also, I'll talk a little bit about root cuttings. Stem cuttings, which is what we're going to be doing hands-on, I'm not going to talk about much because I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? When we get over to St. Andrews. Grafting and budding, we're not talking about it all. We certainly, tissue culture is, I mean, I may be a propagation specialist, but that's way beyond my skill set. So, okay. First off, and I cut the scientific part of this down, but hormones are critical. How many of you have kids? How many of you either have kids going through hormonal changes or remember kids?
And we'll never forget.
Yes, well, I have a great niece who just turned 11 in January, who went from a loving, bouncy little kid to moody, and I'm going, okay. Hormones. Hormones are critical to growth in humans and in plants. And the auxin hormone is critical to plants, and what you want to do is maximize it at the area where you want roots growing. So you'll notice it here says remove the apical bud. Now basically that means remove the top growth on the plant. Okay, that's really fancy. So you don't want it trying to bloom. If there are blossoms on the plant, you are going to cut them off. It's painful, but you will cut them off of the cutting, not the entire plant, just of the cutting. Because what you want is all of the hormones going down to the end so that it forms roots. We will talk about taking cuttings at leaf nodes, which is the little bump in the stem. Everybody knows what a leaf node is, right? Little bump in the stem. You will take a cutting right below that because that's where the hormones will form and that's where the roots will form. And we'll talk about using rooting hormones, which, how many of you have ever used rooting hormones before? So you all know what I'm talking about. It's wonderful stuff. It helps with the formation of the roots. Okay, some basics here. Some advantages of cuttings. It's fast. It's simple. And you get to play with sharp tools. It's always a big plus. If you like this plant, you're going to get more of the same. So that can be an advantage. And things grow up fast. Kind of like kids, sometimes it's too fast. I mean, I just started you and now I have to repot you? You're kidding. Disadvantages. You're not going to get any diversity at all. There's not going to be a pleasant surprise of, oh, that was a red flower and now it's pink. And it can potentially, I haven't found this to be very true, but it can potentially increase the vulnerability to disease and insect damage, okay? Some tools, we'll go over, I've got a whole thing full of tools, I'll show you the various tools. We'll go over all of that. Obviously, you need the rooting hormone. I like to use liquid seaweed as a fertilizer with the cuttings. I think it works really well. But there are a number of things. Now the Clorox bottle is up there simply because you should be, I have to admit to some guilt here of not always doing it, but you should always be cleaning your tools after every cut, okay? You can use the liquid fertilizer, you can use wipes, Clorox wipes, whatever, but just in case something has a disease on it, you don't want to be transferring that to the next cut that you make.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
I don't know, how quick can you be?
Why do you like to use liquid seaweed rather than a rooting powder?
Well, two reasons. It stinks really well, so, but I just found that it works well. It's a fairly mild fertilizer, so you're not overwhelming the plants.
I got you.
And so that's the primary reason. But basically any liquid fertilizer, or you could use a granular fertilizer for that matter. But to get started, I like a liquid because it soaks in and gets into that.
Miss K, is the hydrogen peroxide between the two?
Okay, now it says here to use a mixture of perlite and vermiculite, which is ideal, okay? I've also had really, if you had good potting soil, you want one without fertilizer in it, okay, initially, because you want to control the fertilizer. But if you have good potting soil, I've had really good luck just using potting soil. And when we go over for you to do your hands-on, I'm pretty sure what we're going to have, guys, is potting soil, right? So, but perlite and vermiculite are sterile, and that means you can control the amount of food and stuff that goes into the plant. But either will work.
Hey,
Yes.
what is perlite and vermiculite? What is that?
Well, one is a basilica, a rock. And the I forget what the other one is. Somebody help me here.
Google it.
Yeah.
But what's the purpose of it?
They're natural things, but they just they're not dirt. Okay?
Maybe so the dirt doesn't get compressed?
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Perlite is volcanic glass.
They hold
It's
moisture.
glass, yeah.
They hold moisture, too.
Vermiculite is
I mean, I don't know why I use it. I think
Vermiculite is mica.
Yeah. Basically, one's lava, one's ground-up lava.
And perlite is a form of rock.
Excuse me. I apologize. I love the spring.
Those add air, the soil.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, not add air,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't come back.
exactly.
So do they harvest that in like white?
Guys, excuse me just a second. I love the spring. It's a form of affection, of expressing affection back to me. It's not always something I appreciate. Okay. You want to, if you buy the media, and this is true of soil too, for that matter, just to make sure it doesn't dry out and get really hard and stuff. Make sure it's stored in a shady location where the sun's not going to hit it directly, and seal it so other things like leaves and stuff don't get in. I don't know about you, but I do not have a live oak tree, but my neighbors do. And their tree is very generous. It shares.
I wish I had a neighbor.
Okay, let's talk quick about a couple of different kinds of propagators. That is, things to help things grow. One is, no, these are fancy and expensive too. Storage bag. Plastic.
Ziploc bag.
Yep. Now, what you do is and it doesn't have, these happen to be cups, but you can use just a regular little pot. I don't know. It's just that you don't have to go buy pots. You can use Dixie cups. You put the cups with the cutting in and close the bag, and you can control the moisture. If it gets too wet, you can open the bag a little bit, let it air out. You need to add moisture with a mister or something. Then you can open the bag, add moisture, close it back up. Easy. The other thing that, that we've got here is what's called a self-watering propagator. Now, we're not going to do this, but I wanted to show it to you. Basically, it's a pretty big pot where you have a little ceramic, now it needs to be ceramic, pot in the center. You seal the hole on the bottom so that the water doesn't go out. And you put the water in this little pot, and it waters the pot. Okay? Now, if you want your soil or potting mix moist when it goes in, so that the cutting is starting off with a moist space, and all that does is control the amount of moisture that goes around. All right, let's talk types of cuttings for just a second. I'm going to try this. Every time I walk away from that thing, Frank, it better work. I like to paste and, okay, leaf cuttings, which we're going to talk a little bit about, leaf, bud cuttings, root cuttings, and then the one that we're going to spend time on today, stem cuttings. Okay, let's talk about leaf cuttings. This happens to be a Rex begonia cutting, and you do that. You know what a Rex begonia is, a big leaf begonia, okay? You take a very sharp instrument. Box cutters work really well for this. And you cut along the veins and divide one of the big leaves up into pieces, all right? So you've got all these little pieces. Now, you're going to cut the piece off at the top. Again, you want all the effort going into the root formation. And you stick it in the pot. Now, bulk chipping. Again, we're not going to have time to do this today.
Okay, wait. When you were talking about cutting up those leaves, did you stick the like the African marlins here? You stuck an infant in, that's how you did that?
In the soil.
And then, that's it?
Did you use your soft first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there food leaves you can do that with, or just flowers?
I'm sorry.
Can you do that with food leaves or just flower leaves, the cutting?
I've never tried the other, but you can try it, see? Won't hurt anything, but you don't know roots.
I won't do that right now, but yes.
Okay, ball chipping, this is where you have a ball, a flower ball, and you cut it into pieces. Now you need to make sure that every piece has a piece of the base, a basal piece, okay? Yeah. On it, because that's where the growth is going to occur.
Well, there you go.
Get some perlite, stick them in there. It's going to look like it's dead. And then it will start growing. Root cuttings. So don't panic. It's going to look like it's dead, okay? Keep it moist. You'll get some growth. Root cuttings, basically, you pull your plant up, and you got all these roots, and you chip them off, and you stick them in the dirt. Now, they're basically right on top, but lightly covered with soil, okay? All right, what do we got here? Like I said, I topped up my thing. Herbaceous cuttings, this is what we're going to be doing, mostly stem cuttings. There's herbaceous means it's not hardwood or semi-hardwood, but it's a bush. It's got really soft branches on it. So, softwood and semi-ripe, you're going to be cutting well, you can cut it anytime, but you want to do this in the spring, okay? Or early summer. Excuse me. All right, I apologize.
You want to do it this spring?
If you've got true softwood, you're going to want to do new growth. And if you got what's called semi-soft would be a hibiscus, for example. Then you are going to want to get the bottom to be pretty hard, or as hard as it gets. And the top will be soft, and you're going to cut part of the top off. We'll talk about that. Okay. Semi-hardwood cuttings. Late spring or summer, usual method. You can do the nodal cutting, or you can do what's called a heel cutting. And again, I'm going fast through this. But a heel cutting is where you cut the stem, but you also pull off part of the bud. Does that make sense? Yes. Do you? I'll try and show you when we get over there. It's easier to see. The node here, you've got this. It's just a regular cutting. This is where you've taken part of the original stem off with it. Okay?
So that's like a rose?
Like a rose would be something you could do that with, yes.
And you cut like...
Now, if you're going to, I said this is a person who raises roses. If you are going to take cuttings, rose, make sure that that rose is on its own roots. That it is not a hybrid tea or grafted rose. Okay? You know why?
You don't know what you're doing.
Well, you get the rose that you took the cutting from, but it won't have strong roots. It has been grafted onto some other roots because that particular rose was developed for its blossom, but not for its hardiness of its root system, so they graft the rose onto some other. And if you've ever tried to raise roses, I have one that's doing it to me right now. I need to shut up, don't I? But anyway, it has some growth coming up from the roots, which means that I've got two different roses growing on the same rose bush. And the problem with that is, and it did this to me last year, my Olympiad, it did this to me last year, and the rose that is grafted onto is really pretty little red rose, very pretty, except it only blooms once. Okay? It blooms in the spring. Traditional roses, a lot of them, that's what they did. They didn't bloom all summer. All the hybridization got it to where the flowers would bloom all summer. That's why people want to buy hybrid roses. So I got twofer, but it's also a very bushy rose and it tries to take over. Yes,
Okay, when you did that heel cut, did you cut like halfway through that bud?
Yes.
You don't take the whole bud off?
no.
Okay.
You just kind of slice through it.
Okay.
And that's the basal shoot. The shoot is sacred at its severed. Whew! I used to do this professionally. You think I could talk? Severed at its base, the whole thing is taken, and then you just cut that. I'll show you. A mallet is you're burying a leaf with part of the stem attached. Okay, hardwood cuttings, and I have to say that I don't have a lot of personal experience with hardwood cuttings, but basically you would do those in the winter when the tree or shrub is, well, it's going to be a tree for the most part, dormant. Okay? All right. Now, this is an example of a hardwood cutting. So you're going to, if there's any growth on it, this is Georgia season, that's hard. You're going to cut the green stuff off, okay? You're going to take a cut there. And you've got current season's growth there. This is the old growth. This is the new growth. So you want to plant the new growth because it's going to be more vulnerable to rooting. And basically what you do is a sloping cut at the top and a horizontal cut at the bottom. And I'll show you, you couldn't want to scale the base, and this is true on semi-hardwoods as well. You just take a sharp knife, again I use box cutters for a lot of this, and scale the base to make it more vulnerable to absorbing the hormones and stuff that'll help it grow. Okay. Select a plant that is healthy, not disease or insect ridden, okay? Vigorous. Water the day before, water thoroughly the day before, ideally. If we get some rain, you could just have it rain. Okay, what's that?
Wednesday.
Take the cuttings early in the morning. That, again, you want less stress on the plant that you're cutting so that your cutting is healthy. Immediately place cuttings in water or a plastic bag that has either water or a damp paper towel or something in it. You know how I got into doing this? It's my mother's fault.
Usually.
I mean, I tell everybody, if you think hard enough, you can blame everything on your parents. One of my memories of my childhood is we're driving down the road and we have to stop the car. Well, my mother gets out of the car, goes over the side of the road, takes cuttings. My other favorite memory is, now I grew up in Southern California, and one time we were visiting one of the missions in California. It had this beautiful courtyard little garden.
Uh-oh.
And, yeah. My mother and my sister and I were the only ones in there. Mom had Pat and I standing guard while she took cuttings. But she always carried bags with paper towels or I kept saying, Mom, we're going to get arrested.
Right?
Get arrested.
In the mission.
Jesus is always watching.
Anyway. Anyway, it was all Mom's fault.
Now they got TV cameras.
Okay. Store in a cooler fridge if you can't get them in the ground right away. Alright. And recut under water, ideally, again.
Why in the morning? Why would you take cutting in the morning?
Because it's damp and moist and it has, and the cutting is going to be healthier as opposed to dry down in the heat of the day. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. You said put it in the ground right away. Without the roots generating, you let it generate underground
Oh, yeah.
instead of putting it in water?
Well, you can do it in water if you want, depending on the kind of cutting it is.
Right.
But for most cuttings, you're going to
Put it right in the ground.
take the cutting, put some hormonal stuff on it, and stick it in growing media. I started to say dirt, but
How we have to say growing media?
That's like saying the Gulf of America.
yeah, if it's too late, you want to recut under water, under running water, just to have a fresh cut, so that the roots will form. So you've got to. Now, let me tell you this also, and I can't remember if I left this one in. Cut the flowers off. If you have, I know, painful. I know, April, I'm talking fast, okay? All right.
2-minute work.
If you have large leaves, you also want to cut the leaf in half, okay?
What?
Cut the leaf. Now, those of you who picked up rosemary over here, you want to reduce the leaf's volume of that rosemary.
Yes.
All right, so you've got potentially two things.
Frank, she broke it.
You're fine.
Looks good.
You're going to cut this down shorter, and you're going to trim some leaves off, okay?
And then
Why
just
cut it down
later-
short? Why not just trim leaves off?
Well, you want about a 4 to 6 inch cutting. If you get it much bigger, then again, it's trying to put some growth on the top, and you want it to be focusing
That
on the
makes
bottom.
absolute sense.
Okay, cut large leaves in half. I'm moving, April, I'm moving. And here's the rosemary, so narrow the. There you go.
And just dry the leaves out.
I'm moving fast here, guys, because I've been. All right, heel cuttings we talked a little bit about. This is how it looks when you're done. Thank you.
She really did break it.
All right. Well, I'll show you how to score the base, but that's basically what you do. This happens to all the roses that are in this example. The lower half to 3/4 of an inch, you don't want too much of the hormonal, rooting hormone on there, so you're going to tap the excess off. Stick it in some growing media. Moist. Now the growing media needs to be moist. Do your propagator thingy. That's a technical term, by the way. Okay, just for your information, the way the whole rooting process takes place, you stick that in the soil, is what's called dedifferentiation. And basically what that means is this stem decides instead of growing up, I'm going to make roots. The cells in that node have to decide to do something else than what it was doing. And that's one of the things that this whole process makes happen. Is, okay, I think I'll be a root instead of a stem, okay? Or in the case of a flower, the leaf, instead of being a leaf, I'm going to form a root right here.
It's amazing.
How many of you have ever done things in water? Okay, well, I'm not spending any time on that.
It don't always work.
Okay. You're going to do water, fresh cut, you know, yada yada.
Yada, yada.
Hey, I'm highly technical, I'm very scientific with this stuff. She's the president. So roots start and form, and one of the interesting things about rooting in water is you can see this happen. And this is a leaf bud. Basically what you do is you take this stem, and this is a soft stem. You slice it up so there's a leaf on each one. And then you bury it just like that.
Can't kill us.
I said move.
You gotta cross it.
Oh, is that,
Hey,
is that it? I thought I had another slide there.
simple division, and here's Beth. Give her a hand. Hey, Beth.
Okay.
Is it going?
She broke it.
She broke it. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Let me go back.
I'll do it for you. How's that? You tell me when. I'll do it.
Okay, so we're to our final method of propagating today, and it is also an asexual method of propagation, and it is simple division. It is one of the most commonly used methods of dividing plants for several reasons. First of all, it's easy. Doesn't require any special knowledge or expertise. Goes right up my alley. Okay? The next reason is requires minimal care. Once you've done your initial propagation, water it, fertilize it occasionally just like you do for your established plants, and you should be good to go. And the third reason it's commonly used, oops,
Oop, back. Go back.
go back. It is economical.
Okay, it's working.
You don't have to have expensive tools and equipment or materials. And the best thing is when you are done, you have lots of new plants that are either completely free or minimal cost. And if you go to the garden center recently, you know that cheap is good because prices of plants, just like everything else, are just going up, up, up. So, on your handout, there's a slide for legalities, and April already touched on that, so we're going to skip to the next slide, which is our definition. What is simple division? Well, our textbook definition is simple division is a method of plant propagation where a perennial plant is separated into two or more pieces, each piece with an intact root and crown. Okay, so let's break that definition down just a little bit. What kind of plants are we going to be working with? Perennials. Okay, perennials are plants that grow for 2 or more seasons, not annuals that just live for 1 season. And these perennials are unique in that they can be separated out. You can think of it, you've got a plant, and from the base of that plant, you're going to get a bunch of new little plants that form around it. In simplistic terms, you start with the parent plant and there are a bunch of baby plants around it, okay? And what is, because this is asexual reproduction, what is unique about all of these baby plants, or we're going to call them offsets, is they are genetic clones of that parent plant. So if you like the parent plant, you got a bunch more of the exact same thing. There's no way to get new DNA into that plant like you do with sexual reproduction. So if you had bought a daylily last year at the garden center, it's yellow, you planted it, it grew well, you love that daylily, and you want more, the chances of you going to the garden center this year and finding that exact same daylily are next to none. But you should probably have a bunch of little offsets around that daylily already forming. So you have a source of that exact same plant. Okay. Steps in plant division. Okay, this is not rocket science. It is something you probably have intuitively been doing your whole gardening career. But we're going to go through 3 basic steps with just some extra added pointers on a few things. Our first step is you're going to carefully dig the plant out of the ground or remove it from its existing pot. Okay, so you look down, you've got this plant, and there's a bunch of little baby plants around it. You've got this clump. So you're going to dig it out of the ground or out of the pot, using a shovel, using a hand trowel, depending on how big your plant is. The thing that you need to be careful about as you're digging is you want to disrupt the roots as little as possible. The less you disrupt the roots, the more successful your propagation is going to be. So dig around the perimeter of the plant, and around here, the hard part is dig deep enough that you're getting roots. You don't want to just take that clump and rip it out of the ground. You're ripping root hairs, you're ripping roots. Okay, second step, you're going to separate your plant into pieces according to its type of root and crown system. Okay, root and crown systems. We're going to go into more detail on those in just a minute, but we can summarize this step. You've got a clump of parent plant and baby plants. You're going to separate out the individual baby plants. Okay? Now, one thing as you're doing this, especially if you're doing it on a day like today where it tends to be pretty hot outside, you probably want to do the separation, or if you're not going to separate it right away, put this plant under a tree in the shade. You may even want to cover the roots with a damp cloth or something just to keep those roots from drying out. Okay, your third step, you're going to dig a hole that is wide enough to accommodate the new plant. Okay, so you've got all these little babies set out here. Let's say you're going to plant them in the same flower bed as where your other plant was. You just need to fill in more. The important thing is your hole needs to be large enough. You've got this root system on these babies. You don't want to just squeeze those roots all together and stuff them into a little bitty hole. That plant is programmed, those roots want to go down and they want to grow out. And if you coil them up like this, that plant is going to be spending its energy trying to get roots going down rather than growing beautiful flowers or whatever it is that you've got. So the ground is really dry. I have clay soil. Right now, digging that hole deep enough is not real easy sometimes, but it's worth the effort. Okay, so let's go back and let's revisit step number 2 in more detail, the crown and root systems. We're going to look at 3 major types today. The first one is the clumpers. And you'll notice that these names are highly scientific. The clumpers have a couple of unique features. They have fibrous root systems and they produce offsets, smaller plants that grow from the base of the original plant. Okay, so you can see in the picture, you get just a mass of roots in there. These offsets grow in close proximity to the parent plant. Each of them has their own root system, and so those roots just all start growing together. So to separate that becomes a bit of a chore. So our process for dividing our clumpers is to divide, you're going to tease the roots apart or cut with a knife if the roots are tight. Okay. Y'all have done, yes sir.
Beth, could you give us an example of what you would call a clumper, what kind of plant?
Yes, it's on the next bullet point. Okay, good question. Things like daylilies, ornamental grasses. Okay. Y'all done your soil test? How many of you have sandy soil where you live? You lucky people, or you don't think you're lucky. Okay, if you have sandy soil, you dug your clumper out, and you can just sort of brush some of its dirt away. You can visualize the roots a little bit better. You can visualize where one offset ends and the next one begins. And then you can just take your hands and in this space and you're just sort of digging with your fingers and just gradually start pulling and teasing those roots apart. And you'll end up with 2 or more, however many you want. Okay, if you're like me, you live where we have clay soil. So you've got this clump of parent and babies that is planted basically in a chunk of cement. Okay, there is no brushing away the soil and teasing the roots. You're going to have to be a little more brutal with these. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to cut these apart. And in the process of cutting, yes, you are cutting roots. You're probably cutting some of the offsets too in order to separate these, but that's basically the only way you're going to separate them. So instead of having a large clump, you're going to have 2 or more smaller clumps now. Okay? And so to answer your question, Paul, our examples, daylily, gara, hosta, and your ornamental grasses. Okay? And we'll be looking at examples of all 3 of these when we get to the gardens and look at a little bit more about how to separate them.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, you can separate them too with the water hose
Yeah.
and just, baby them, but
Yeah.
it's real bad soil like that.
It sort of depends on how many you're doing, how much time you have, what method you're going to
And
actually.
how muddy you want to get it.
Yeah. Might not get really close. Okay, our second kind of root and crown systems are our runners. Okay, so with these, they easily grow underground by rhizomes or runners. They will root at the node and quickly send up new shoots. Okay, so you have the parent plant, and down, the rhizomes are actually specialized stems. They are not roots, they look like roots, but they're specialized stems, and they're going to grow usually more horizontal to the surface of the earth. So here's your parent plant, the rhizome grows, and about, a little bit away from that parent plant, you're going to have a node, and that node has special cells that's going to send up a crown, which is what grows above the surface, and the roots. So to separate these, you're going to cut the rhizome between the new and existing plant with clippers, and then dig up what you want to move. So if you see, here's the parent plant, and here's an offset right here. So a lot of times you can just take your finger and just sort of dig down in there, and you can feel that rhizome. Take your clippers, go in and clip it. And the nice thing about runners versus clumpers, if you just want that one plant, you can just dig up that one plant. If your parent plant is healthy, you like where it is, that parent plant stays in the ground and it can be sending out more runners. So it's just dependent on how many offsets you want. If you want to dig up the parent plants, you can. And our examples of our runners are phlox, bee balm, aster, lamb's ear, coreopsis, and bullvine. Okay. So clumpers are harder to dig up and divide. Your runners are going to be a little bit easier. Okay, our third kind of root and crown systems are our thick rhizomes. Okay, with our runners, we had rhizomes that were like small roots. These are thick rhizomes. They're technically thick and fleshy stems that are modified to store food. Sometimes people call them tubers. And so they are under the ground. These thick rhizomes can be ½ inch to 1 inch or larger in diameter. They're great big looking things. And so to separate these, to divide, you're going to use a knife or a pruner to cut into sections with each containing at least one eye that will form a new plant. So you can see up here, this is the rhizome right here. You're going to just go in and cut apart. You're going to have some roots still attached here, but you also need to have an eye. And this time of year, the eyes are probably going to be a lot more obvious than at other times of the year. Sometimes you're going to go, you're not going to see an eye. So our next question is, when is the best time to propagate, or when do you propagate? Our examples are bearded iris, cannas, and dahlias or dahlias, depending on where you live. So when to divide? Okay, you can divide perennials every year if you want to, but you don't have to necessarily. In general, you're going to divide plants when they fail to thrive. You're looking at that parent plant and you're going, hey, you're not growing as tall as you used to, you're not blooming like you used to. That plant is giving you signal, hey, it's time to divide me. You need to start over with some offsets. So sometimes they'll start dying out on the offsets will start dying out on the perimeter and sometimes in the center of the plant. But basically, the plant doesn't look as good as it used to. And your next question is, so, what time of the year does it matter when you divide them? And our general rule is this. You're going to divide your spring blooming plants in the fall, and you're going to divide well, it should say divide your divide your fall blooming plants in the spring. And the reason for that is common sense. If your plant is blooming now, it's trying to reproduce itself. It is going to be putting all of its energy into flowers and seeds, and it's not going to have energy left to produce a good, strong new root system. Now, the problem that I have with that is remembering that it's time to divide. Irises are blooming right now, and I know I was looking at mine and thinking, man, some of these are getting a little bit crowded, but don't divide them now. They're either blooming now or they're about to bloom. I want them to bloom. Remembering in September or October, hey, it's time to divide the irises is difficult. My daylilies are just huge clumps right now. They need to be divided badly. But the last 2 summers, by September or October, I don't even see them. They just died back completely, and I forget they're there. So, and if you're going to divide them, it's sort of hard to start digging where you really don't see them. So one thing I'm doing as a gardener, I'm not sure I'm a master gardener, is I'm really working on keeping a gardening journal. And I know some of you already do that, but that's just a real self-discipline kind of thing. Keep a calendar. I write down, like with my seeds, where did I buy my seeds? What kind of potting soil? When did my irises bloom? Just that kind of thing, so I can look back, the last year or year before, just as a guide for gardening in Central Texas. Okay, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Could you put in age special on those irises to get into blooming? Mine look good, they're not blooming.
Okay, we're going to actually divide some irises when we get to the garden. So we'll visit that. And you're not the only person that has that issue. Yes, and it's so frustrating because you wait and they're not blooming. Any other questions?
All right, let's give Beth a big hand.
This is a propagation class for class 40, master gardeners. So we have a lot of plants that we're going to be talking about and propagating. Students over here.
I have nothing. Oh, that's right. He said you're on your
We'll be doing the propagating.
Yes, my house isn't even done yet. I gotta wait until it's done. Oh.
There are different propagation stations that are going to be used.
Yeah.
Soil and other things that we're doing for the propagation.
See you up in the agri, okay? So
Your hair looks good.
Thank you. Thank you.
she's got her official apron on.
Where do you buy those?
It was a gift. I think somebody got them here locally, and then we got them embroidered somebody here in town, this is branded, you know, it has to be this brand or whatever. So yeah, you can get it. Just ask around. Yes, and we're out in the garden and skin stuff going on. Yes, you need to protect yourself and your eyes and be appropriately dressed out here. With our seeds, let's see, where do we start? So I'm going to show y'all real quick with y'all spaced out there. It's not that critical to be up close. This is some of the soil you each have at your tables, and for a potting situation, you're just going to put some in there. Rocket science, like we talked about earlier, rocket science. And when you're opening up these seeds, you don't want a windy day because things can go everywhere, but you need to read it all, the instructions first, how deep it is, how long to germinate. So this is I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use marigolds. So full sun.
God's calling.
Yes, it's time, 11 o'clock. It's a 1/4 inch depth, and it's outdoor sown March through May. So we're going to catch it right when we should. When you open these babies up, there either could be, you can feel them in there. You're either going to have a whole bunch or just a few. And all of these seeds are so different. These are like spiked winged things with a little tail on the end. So like a dart. So that probably helps. Anyway, with your soil, we're going to make some holes in the soil. You can either use a pencil, just make a little hole, your finger. I have my mother-in-law's old dibble, so you can make a great big hole, and you just plop a seed in there at approximately the 1/4 inch depth. I probably went too deep right there. You know what? I'll make the next one less deep. So it's not anything big about it, and then you put that in, and the next thing we will do after that is to water it gently. And so because if you've got some little bitty seeds like the mustard seeds, those babies can wash away and go exactly where you don't want them to in a great big clump all together. So you want to do it just a little bit. And the one thing that I did not tell y'all earlier, identify. Put something on the pot itself or put a label on it, because you won't remember in 8 to 10 days what it was that you planted. So that's very, very important. So so this one you would have it in a shady area. These peat pots, you want them to generally be wet, damp. And then when they get dried out like this, you know they need water. So that's in this case. If you were to use, we used to do one with garden greens, that we put the soil in here and put all kinds of little seeds, get them all watered in, and then you could cover it up, and it kept all the humidity, and you've got the sun coming through. Got to be careful not to burn it up, too much heat. So there are different containers that you could use. We talked about the solo cups. We talked about a tin can with a hole in the bottom. So you can use just about whatever you have. Just be sure that it's clean, and you're not going to be bringing funguses from one pot to your new growth. I would like y'all to take a quick walk around the garden. We're just going to look at some seeds around here. We've already done some trimming, so I can't show you all of them. On these adult holly, And these Gulf mollies, these are going to disperse in the wind. There's not really any seed on, just a little bit. They're going to disperse in the wind. So if you have Gulf mollies, you're going to have babies come out. And that's okay. They're very easy to pick up. So this is nice and dry. It's ready to plant. And there's a seed just right there. Crepe myrtles. One crepe myrtle and you've got 5 babies. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Those seeds are so good about replanting themselves. So that's nature's way of redoing it. And they fall down. Don't yes. I wish the poppies were ready, but they are not. If you're familiar with the Vitek, also called the Texas lilac, Vitek, it makes a beautiful purple bloom, and all those little blooms make seeds. These two make babies, so there's a baby over there, and there's another baby over there. So those blooms are great, they go to seed, and then they disperse themselves. Here is an example of this, I can't remember what it's called. No, not called. Is it Jerusalem seed? Jerusalem, yes. All right, so there's your beginning of your seed. It's the bloom, and then it's going to, after it does the blooming, well, then it's going to make a dried head. And the thing is, you got to catch it before it disperses. So right now, I believe everything is out of there. This is already passed. But otherwise, you'd have just what we have in those little packets. It'll be the seeds in here. You've seen with your daisies and whatever, you pick the petals off, that base is all the roots inside there, ready to go. Let's see, what else have we got? This other stuff, some of it's going to be dividing. So,
See you later, bud.
Walking real fast.
Milkweed. This is what the butterflies really love, is the milkweed, and it's not grown up yet, but it makes a lovely seed also, and will reseed itself. So these are probably babies around here. Not the oaks, but seeds. So that's what here's another example of future seed right here. So when it gets dried out, don't you bite me. This is too, okay, there we go. So this one is, it's too young. It needs to dry out some more. So that's what I was telling you about the timing of when you harvest the pod, is you got to wait till nature is through with it, and before you get the seed. Okay. Yeah, be careful. I don't want to go and wasp in there. All right, let's see.
Where that oak tree really drops a lot of.
Well, that one does both. It comes off the roots and. Anyway, I think that's mainly what I have about the seeds. Do you have any questions?
What do you recommend? How many seeds do you put to start it? Do you just put one, or?
It depends on how big that plant is going to be. If you're going to have like a okra, you may just want to put one seed in that small pot.
Right.
If you're going to have flowers that they're small, you could put 3 in there.
Okay.
Because if you put, for example, 3 okra seed in there and they all grow, well, then you've got to divide those tender roots, because they'll be too close together to go in the ground like that. 3 okra will be too big. But if you have individual pots of that, you'll be all right.
They don't like being transplanted though.
Well, yes it can. Yes,
Can be, they don't like it though.
Well, in that pot, if you do it in a peat pot, just
A big peat pot, yeah. And
just
don't-
tear up the bottom and then the roots can go right through it. Right, right. All right, let's get y'all to the tables and get you some seeds planted.
People might want to look at when you purchase these at your local store. She talked about the dates, and typically the older the date, you'll have a less germination success, and I'm sure Claire mentioned that. So here's one dahlia seeds. And seeds are about yay long, okay? So this here, it says best used by or sell by December of 2023. So I said, I want to try these suckers out. So I planted a bunch of these 10 days ago, 7 days ago, by best used by date of December of 2023. And I basically have had 100% germination. And I don't know if you like dahlias or not, but they make a really pretty blossom flower, okay? But all seeds won't do that way. There are some seeds you may only have a 50% germination and they may only be a year old. It just depends on the seeds, but more importantly, like Ernestine that works out here and is a master gardener, it depends on how you store your seeds. They need to be stored in an area that's not a lot of light, not really hot, but like inside your house in a file cabinet or in a closet or something like that. And typically that will increase your percentage of germination from those seeds, okay? So just keep that in mind. And I'm gonna shut my mouth, turn it over to you, and then you can turn it over to her. All right.
Tim's shutting his mouth about as hard as me shutting my mouth.
A couple good things that you can do. You can take these seeds if they're old, get a paper towel, get it damp, put some seeds, put 10 seeds down on it, cover it up and get it damp, and put it in a dark area, and see how many sprout out of that 10. That'll tell you what percentage is good. Now, saving them, you could actually put them in a Ziploc bag, put them in your refrigerator, down on the bottom shelf where it's cool. That's what we do, and it seems to save them. But anyway, okay. We got Kay here. She's going to talk a little bit more on the sexual, about what she got up and talked about. And then after she gets done, we're going to have Beth up here to show you some things that she was talking about, and then we'll get to the tables. Okay, so go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh.
3 times. Oh, 3 times. I just can never get it right. Okay, first off, I said we were going to talk about tools. I don't know if we'll need this one. Look at that. Good.
Don't get close to her in a dark alley.
Guys, be careful. All right, some of the tools that you will need for cuttings are pruners. In my class, when I took propagation, they were doing, and I'm sorry that Kathy Carroll's not here because she was one of the ones who taught it. They said, bring pruners. And one of my classmates, who shall remain nameless because he's still a master gardener, came in carrying a big pair of loppers, pruning loppers. We've never actually let him live that down. Scissors. I use scissors. Now, these, which are one of my favorite pairs of scissors, you really don't need for cuttings, but these are very handy for seeds. When you germinate and you have too many seeds in one little space, you don't want to try and pull them up because that may pull the plant that you want to leave up. You take a little pair of zippers and snip them.
Okay,
Okay.
My
Okay.
favorite thing,
Okay.
box cutters. Okay, now I want to show you a couple of things. I'm going to show you how to do this. Do I have Rudy? This is, anybody know what this is?
Plumeria.
Plumeria. Now, if you have a plumeria, it's in the ground, and you want to take a cutting, cut it off like this has been. Then you have three options. You can cut it off here, and then you have this nice long cutting, or you can cut it off here, and you have a shorter cutting, or you can cut it off both places, and you have three. Plumeria is hard to grow. Put some rooting hormone on it, stick it in the ground. Tough, really tough. This is Tim's cutting. These were planted in February, did you say, Tim?
I'm sorry?
You said these were planted in February?
They were planted in the end of November
End of November.
of this
So that's how
past year.
fast it grows, okay? So cutting should be very effective. Now, I am going to demonstrate cutting. Got some rooting on here. And I'm sacrificing you, sweetie. I fell in love with this hibiscus the other day.
That's from the garden or you garden?
I really like it. That means,
You have to talk, speak up.
but I brought it here so you guys could chomp on it too. Be kind. It's got lots of flowers and buds. So, and of course you need to take down here, right below a node. Okay, right below a node. And then I'm going to undo these like you're supposed to. Come on, help me. I said, oh well, it actually come off. This is the hard part. That's coming off. That's coming off.
No.
Actually, you're all going to come off down to right there. Sorry, bud. And then I'm going to pull these leaves at the bottom off. Okay. I'm going to maybe use here. There you go. You want to leave a few at the top, but not many. Okay? Bottom of the stem, wet.
Is that
This
just
is
water?
Just water.
Just water.
This is really, yes, water, just plain water. This is really hard work. I mean, it's tough. Put some rooting hormone on it. Stick in the dirt.
Is that topsoil? Or it's not the
Okay.
Is that the same soil she used for the seeds earlier?
This is actually soil. Now, technically you should be using the vermiculite perlite mixture, but I have found that I have very good luck if you have, now it needs to be good potting soil, but if you have good potting soil, and it needs not to have any natural fertilizer having been added to it, because you want to control the fertilizer. That's it, and then you
Okay.
water it lightly.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. I know sometimes in Beth, when she was talking about putting cuttings in, one of the ladies anyway, she used the little dole, the little pencil thing.
Yeah, you can.
And when you stick it in the ground like that, do you think there's still enough of the rooting hormone on it? Or do you think it?
Well,
you think?
Yeah, I've never had any problem with it, but basically it'd be better. I just didn't, oh, there's a pencil there. I didn't have one, I didn't think to bring one with me. To use to double make a
Yeah, I always make the hole, yeah.
Just so it doesn't rub off?
Yeah.
Okay.
water. Any questions? Now then, as far as materials for you to use when you do your hands-on, we've got some stuff under the tree. There's some Jerusalem sage growing over there. There's, Ernie, what did Ernie say the ground cover was? Oh, periwinkle.
A crawling.
Yeah, under the tree that you can cut on. That's pretty much it that's growing out here in the garden. Any questions? I tried to make this really hard.
It's very simplistic.
Which would you prefer, an anvil or a bypass cutter?
Do need to trim this off just a little bit more. There.
Is hibiscus considered?
And this is where you would technically get some Clorox or Clorox wipes and wipe off your tools. Now the one thing I forgot to show you that you don't really need to do with hibiscus, but that you would do with the semi-hardwood. This is where this comes in, and I'm not going to do it, but I will show you how to do it. If you have a hard or semi-hardwood stem, okay, take a sharp instrument and you will just rub it down about an inch and take the top layer of bark off. Now you don't want to get too deep because you don't want to damage the xylem that's underneath there, okay? You just want to take the top layer, again, so that it will absorb the rooting hormone and the other fertilizers that you're going to put on. So you want to take that off. Now, things that are softwoods and stuff, that's not so necessary, but anything that's got a pretty hard stem, then you want to do that. Anything else? Okay.
So if I can just take a minute and add to what Kay said. I asked Kay to bring this. This is a plumeria she mentioned. So there's a lot of plants, plumerias, plants that a lot of people only grow in their house, like ficus and things like that. You can make all different kinds of cuttings, okay? This is a branch that was given to me last night at my church, and a friend has already snipped it. So plumerias, along with ficus plants and other plants like that, they'll tend to weep. And so you take the cutting and you set them off to the side for a day or two, let them kind of form a little callus or a scab there, okay? And then it will hold the moisture in that limb. So this thing here is, when I take this home later today, I'm gonna cut on it further. I'm gonna make a cut here, I'm gonna make a cut here. Then I'll have an opportunity to grow 3 plumerias, okay? So the plumerias, these that I grew, this is the tip like this. So I planted these and I made these cuttings in the end of November. This one will bloom this year. This one, as you can tell, was a middle cut, like here. It will grow leaves, but it will not blossom this year typically. It won't blossom until the next year. Plumerias are that way, and it's like that way with a lot of plants. You take a middle cutting, it will root at all these nodes, but it typically will not produce a flower until the next spring because it doesn't have that flowering tip.
Can I have a tip?
I'm sorry?
Can I have a tip?
Yes.
Have they been in those same containers since November?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you haven't transplanted.
And as Kay will tell you, and any other master gardener, the idea of any time you're doing any kind of a cutting, division, whatever, do not water too much, because that is the biggest killer of everything. Keep the soil moist, just moist, and it may mean that for the first couple of weeks you may be misting it almost every day.
Misting is a perfect way to do that because it tends not to soak the soil. It's pouring my water around.
No, it's got a TS on it. But water is the biggest killer. our biggest enemy, because we all want to think more water, the better, okay? And these things, once I plant them, this or anything else, I usually put them on the north side of my greenhouse that do not get direct shade. I want some impartial shade, dampened shade, to allow them to get a little bit of shade for the photosynthesis, but not where it's overtaken by shade. Because the goal is, like she cut all the tops off, is for the production of that plant to put its energies into making roots. And as they make the roots, then you've got a success and you'll be able to succeed. So again, I'm going to shut my mouth.
Wait,
go
Tim.
for it.
Tim, questions, Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since it's 4 months old now,
Yes.
what do the roots look like?
The roots will be white, and I just repotted them up, and they'll grow just like any other container. They'll have the white roots. You'll be able to see them on the bottom and on the surround the sides.
Okay, as it gets bigger, you either transfer it obviously to a bigger pot or plant it in the ground.
Yes, eventually.
So you already repotted that one?
Yes, I've repotted it once.
When? How long? How many?
Month and a half ago.
Okay, thank you.
So is that the most of the cuttings you'll get from that piece, or could you actually make more?
You can make, well, this one I would only suggest take 3. Here, here, and you have this, okay? I had a plumeria last year that was about this tall. I gave it a haircut, just like we get haircuts. And I had 23 plumeria cuttings about this size. I potted them all, and I sold them at my church festival. And I got $25 a plant. And that goes to our general fund. You go to Millburgers, someplace like that, something that size or a little bit skinnier, they're going to charge you $35, $45, depending upon the variety, etc. Okay? All right. He says I got to go.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
I got some of those plumerias over here if anybody wants them.
Okay.
Okay, Beth's going to talk to you real briefly about cutting. And then we'll get started. Okay?
Division.
Division.
Yeah, Tim, you're causing division.
That is your gun? No.
Okay, we're going to talk just a few minutes about simple division and specifically examples of the clumpers, the runners, and the thick rhizomes. So the first one I have is our clumpers, and for some reason I seem to be doing a lot of propagation of ornamental grasses. Right now is a good time. They're just coming out of their dormancy for the winter. A lot of them, you should have trimmed them back to maybe 3 to 6 inches of what's dead on them, and then you have nice new green. Now this was an ornamental grass, and I'm not really sure what its name is, but I had it growing in a pot, and the last freeze, that little pot was under something, and it didn't get put into the closet, and so it sort of froze, but it still demonstrates the concept. One thing about pots and freezing, if you're not aware of it, and you think about it, it makes sense. That pot, it gets a lot colder for that plant than what's in the ground. I've read it's like 1 hardiness zone less than where you are. So like if we're 9A in the ground, this pot can only survive to like 8A. So you need to be a little more selective about what you're putting in your pots if you're not bringing them in when it gets really, really cold. Okay, so this was a grass. It is a clumper, and it forms a very fibrous root system, and you can see that here. And so each of these is like a little offset. So there's no way that you're going to go in there with this and separate out individual offsets. So the tools that you're going to use to separate this, you can use things such as your fingers, especially on something small like this, that there's really not a whole lot of this. It's just potting soil, so yes, you can brush away that soil easily. You can cut them with this. Another handy tool that you can get is a garden knife. It's inexpensive at the garden center. It's got these nice prongs on the front that you can use for reaching in and just separating, and it's got a serrated edge on it that's handy for cutting. So it's a good tool to have in the garden. You can actually also buy a gardening knife like this.
You got one.
There. That has a much hardier blade on it, that if you're doing something larger is handy. And if you're doing just a really large clump, for example, the other day out at the Big Red Barn, I was dividing some muley grass, and the clump was about this big. That soil out there is hard clay, and so the tool that I use, Ryobi sells this as a gardening saw, and I would still be out there trying to divide that if I hadn't had this. If you're doing a lot of division and it's really big, you've got clay soil, this is actually a pretty handy tool to have. Okay, so that's our clumper. The next thing we're going to look at are our runners, and I'm just going to show you a couple of things with runners. This is mondo grass or monkey grass, and it divides by runners. And I just want to show you if I can. Do you see the runner in there? Okay. So what you would want to do is with your clippers, first of all, just sort of feel down into the soil, or you can feel with your clippers. Cut that, and then if you like where this chunk is, leave it, and then take this one out. That's a handy one. Another plant that divides by runners is bulbine. How many of you are familiar with bulbine? It is like one of my very, very favorite plants because it requires almost no care. And it is hardy. As long as it doesn't get below about 25 degrees, you're good with it. It is a succulent, and it divides. You divide it out. I'm not going to pull this one out because I'm going to let somebody divide it out. But it has spiky blossoms that form. They're yellow blossoms. They stay for a month or two, and you'll just have this with a bunch of these spiky blossoms. It's pretty. The bees like it. It's easy to divide. I mean, you don't have to be super careful with it, and it does freeze. Now the thing about it, as far as freezing, if you're Tim Steele, you go out and you dig you dig your bulbine up, and you get a nice pot, and you get potting soil, and you put it in there, and you do that. You may even divide them at that point. If you're me, I'm hoping it's not going to get below 25 and I can just leave them. But if the forecast says it's going to get cold, I go out and I basically, barely put the shovel in the ground, and I'm almost ripping them out of the ground because it's cold out there, the north wind's blowing, and I get a big chunk or a piece of newspaper, moisten that down, and then I just lay these in that moist newspaper, wrap them up. Don't really necessarily have a lot of soil on them, and I've kept them for a month or two in a dark closet like that. And then as it starts to warm up, no danger of freezing again, then I'll get them out. If I haven't already divided them, divide them out, replant them, and they're good to go. I love them. Okay, so that's my sales pitch for bulbine. Okay, the last one that we're going to look at is the large rhizomes. And okay. So this is red yucca.
That's all right, I'm doing.
Okay, so you can see here is the parent plant, and over here these would have been the small eyes to begin with, and then they're getting larger. And so what you can do is you can just separate that out and stick each of these in the ground, and these are really pretty hardy. Now I think one thing that's interesting about propagation, and nobody has really addressed it, but we talk about propagating by seeds or by cuttings or by division. A lot of plants you can do by any of those methods, but there's the best method for doing it. Some things are easier just to do a quick cutting, I read about trying to start yuccas from seeds, and apparently, I mean, they have those beautiful red seed pods that shoot up, and there's tons of seeds. But, you know, you may go out and find a few little yuccas starting to grow. But I've read that it's really pretty slow to get those seeds to germinate. They're really hard seeds, and talking about scarification, I think you definitely would need to do that to get those even started. This, if you've got a yucca plant, like there's one over here, yeah, right there, you can get probably 10 to 15 plants out of that one just by simple division, and they're ready to go. So something to remember on that. Okay, the last thing, the question was about irises. And so I just dug this up over there, and you can see the roots that are here. Here are the stalks, and this is the rhizome. Okay, so you want to find at least one eye, and the eyes are not real visible right now because it's not really the season when they're putting on eyes. But to divide it, if you had a big clump of these, you would look down, see where your rhizomes are. First of all, look at the rhizomes and see if they look healthy. These things stay in the ground for years, and sometimes these rhizomes will just start getting, for lack of a better word, really gnarly looking. They're diseased, they're starting to degenerate. That is not a good prospect for dividing. So you're gonna find something that looks healthy. This obviously looks healthy, and it's got some roots on it. So to put this in the ground, first of all, let's talk about something that I failed to talk about earlier. If on any of these others, when you put your plant into the ground, you want to put it in so that the roots can hang down. The hole needs to be big enough to accommodate the roots, like we said. And here's where you can get into a real discussion with a lot of gardeners. Do you put something else in that hole besides the plant? There's some people that say, hey, you should throw in maybe a slow release fertilizer. And we've talked about being careful with that as far as burning the roots. Some people say put in compost. Same thing, be careful you don't burn the roots. Some people say, hey, fill that soil at least halfway with some water before you put the plant in. Make sure the water drains. If you have really heavy clay soil, it may not drain, so you may not want to put a lot of water in. But right now our soil is so dry that if you put a little water in that hole, that's going to help to keep those roots moist. And then some people say, okay, you got that plant stuck in the hole, use a good grade soil mix, maybe like a raised bed kind of soil mix, to backfill that hole. And then other people say, that plant's been growing in your crummy dirt all this time, and that baby might as well learn to live in that crummy dirt. Backfill it with what came out of that hole. Okay, but the main thing is backfill it with, you may want to do some internet research, ask your neighbors who are growing something similar. They may be able to give you some good advice. And then water it in. Just, you don't want any air pockets in there, because those little root hairs, as they form, need to be able to hit soil so they can find moisture, and they'll be more likely to grow well. Okay, so here's your rhizome. Now, looking at that, a lot of people think root, but it's really a specialized part of the stem. Roots should go like that. But that's not the way it grows, does it? It grows like this. And so the question was, who asked the question about irises? Somebody did. Yeah. Okay. When you set this in the ground, if this is the level of your soil, you want to put it so that the top of the rhizome is just above the soil level. You want to be able to see the top of the rhizome. For some reason, they are more likely to bloom if irises have that amount of sunlight, that energy from the sunlight there. If you plant it too deep, it's not going to bloom. Now, the next question, well, I did that and it's still not blooming. And I know Paul grows lots of irises, and we've had a discussion over the last couple of years. My irises aren't blooming. My irises aren't blooming. We don't really have an answer. So sometimes it may be that that's your signal that those irises are getting old and they need to be propagated. You need to, just give them a little jump start with that. It may be that maybe as it's been growing, maybe your mulch and other things have slowly covered up that rhizome where it's not getting the sunlight. But you can see in Ernestine's plot over there, some of those irises are blooming and some of them aren't. So, and some of them are just on a different time schedule too. They may still be about to bloom, they just haven't started blooming yet. The other thing about irises and putting them in the ground, if you put this in the ground, and you got a few roots here, but they're not into the soil yet to firmly hold this, and you've got this rhizome and you've got these stalks, you put this in the ground like this, and you walk away, you're gonna come back and it's gonna be like this. Gravity's gonna pull it over because this is just too heavy. So the experts tell us that we cut from about 4 to 6 inches up, we cut these leaves in a fan shape. So you're gonna do something like this. We still have leaves on there for photosynthesis, but they're not so heavy that it's gonna tip this over. So you'll put this in the ground and then water that in. Okay, we have, yes. Okay.
Adding something when you put a plant in the ground. In Hawaii, my husband used to put dead fish.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Little protein.
Yeah, and also I talked to I may sound stupid, but I talk to dogs, cats, and people. I keep thinking, tell them how beautiful they are.
Yeah.
Or, and it works.
Yeah.
It really does, at least for me it does.
Yeah. And another thing, before you propagate any plant, especially if it's something really special to you, I always try to look it up on the internet real quickly and just see what other people have done. And when I Google stuff, I would put in, like if I was doing this, I would put irises and I put Central Texas after it. Because otherwise you're learning how to propagate irises in Maine. And they're talking about doing stuff in July and I'm thinking, that just doesn't seem like a good time to do it. And then you look at the source and you go, oh. So that is just my rule of thumb. Anytime I Google something, I put Central Texas and I'm more likely to find something that's appropriate for our growing conditions. Okay, there are all sorts of plants here that we can divide. In this section right over here, I have marked the boxes like with cannas and I put simple division. So if you're looking for something that's specific to dividing by simple division, you can look here. And there are others that have been brought that are scattered about too. But I think that's it. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be doing a walkthrough to the different stations, and the first one we're going to over here is how to plant seeds. So we have people doing their little potting there and filling their things with potting soil and everything, and they'll be planting their seeds shortly.
Knocking off a lot of the root hormone. Then you can pinch it towards like that to give it support.
Now.
And then you can go from there. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Excuse me, I didn't mean to walk in front of you.
No.
Man, I like you.
Each one of these? Do you think that it's like each one of these can do it, or?
Oh, I think.
I mean, they're a node, right?
It's, yeah, we could. This is actually a saprophyte.
What is it?
Saprophyte. It's called a Mexican. I just told her what it was.
Oh.
It's a cactus actually.
Oh, cool.
So and it doesn't need a lot of water.
No.
Once you get it, it likes the sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a Mexican orchid cactus.
Oh,
so
Mexican orchid
It
cactus.
blooms really big blooms like this when it starts to bloom.
Pretty. Cool.
So, So it's like a cactus. It's like you could probably just plant this whole thing.
You think so? You think so?
Yeah, put some, recut the stem,
Yeah. Maybe.
and then do your rooting planting. You want to have a fairly big pot
Okay.
because it's heavy
Yeah.
and it'll fall over. Mine's like this tall right now.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so
Okay. Yeah, I think I will do this one. I think in this pot, I think it's the biggest pot that they have
that's
available.
probably the biggest pot.
Yeah.
Now you could probably cut this minor leaves off here if you wanted
Yeah.
to.
And you think I could probably
You could
do
probably
those
plant
too,
really-
right?
Right.
It seems to stand to reason that's probably what would work.
And good luck.
Thank you.
The cutting,
Whole thing?
doing the trimming to make sure that we get everything off.
Yep.
There, okay. Now, let's see here. Cut
Make sure you get a true leaf on it.
that off, and that we want just one thing. So cut one of these off, okay?
Okay.
It doesn't make any difference.
Are you going to be doing cuttings?
Okay.
Yes, I'm learning how to do it.
You're good.
How they do it.
So this
Score the bottom.
I'm gonna score the
Put
bottom.
To bring something to cut with?
No,
rooting
I just
hormone,
seeing how they do
put
it.
it
so
in
I
the
can-
dirt.
How far do I put it in the dirt? How far? How deep do I put it in the
Yeah,
dirt?
no, you want to put it in so it's stable in the
Yeah,
dirt.
about that far.
So
it's
about,
2 inches,
yeah,
2.5
about-
Yeah, for that one it's about that far. About
Two and a half inches.
about a third of the plant.
About a third of the
exactly.
plant?
Third of the total
Exactly.
length.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool. Thank you.
Let me rescue my
Rescue your stuff, any kids?